Tom Nelson, man, what a cool car.
Oh, and a
Dude.
great story there too with those
Yeah.
guys. It wouldn't run. Something to do with the ECU wouldn't work with the distributor or whatever. So those guys all pushed that car up there and sprayed a bunch of ether to it and got it fired up to double the bulbs to make sure that he stayed in. That was pretty awesome to watch them do that. They did it, and when you can see somebody like Goldstone that's the biggest, the baddest of all, he can do that, and not only do it the way that he did it, but doubled up and everything else. You think that would inspire more of the guys that think they're the baddest of the bad to come try to do that, because then you can beat your chest.
All right, guys, welcome to episode 110 of the Drag Drive Repeat show presented by Summit Racing. Dude, tonight we've got a crazy show. And next up, Performer Built Transmissions. Love Ryan and the team up there. They're the official transmission builder of Drag Drive Repeat. They focus on GM transmissions, really hard focus on 4L60, 4L80 stuff, moving into some of the 6L equipment there, and have Howie Price's car that is now twin turbo and living 4,800 pounds, twin 80 millimeter turbos on a LS, living with the 4L60 that is like, I think 7,300 pounds fully loaded, pulling on a drag and drive. So absolutely crazy. Ryan knows what he's doing. If you have a GM Trans and want it to be built by the best Performer Built, is the way to go. So hang on, let me pull this down real quick. So I want to talk about the old truck. I have put a lot of miles on that. Probably, like I told Stoney earlier, 200 miles probably, and hard miles on it since we put it back together just to make sure it made it to Mega Week, because guys like Chris Story and everybody were beating me up in the Waffle House parking lot. So we got it ready for that. Tons of time to do that. Tons of street miles. All the fun stuff. I beat on it before I broke it the last time. And we make it 400 feet. And it literally grenades 2 pistons. So big shout out to another Race Week family, the Maxons. They have hooked us up with a 5.3 that was sitting in the corner of their shop, and it'll be back at the circuit. But just want to say that was the first drag and drive since 2022 that the truck had been out at. So pretty excited to have been out there.
Michael, that time we raced, who won that? I can't remember.
Oh, you did. Yeah.
Oh,
you
okay.
did.
Okay.
And it wasn't like you won. It was like you put train links on me. Not just one train link. It was like 2 train links. We raced 1,320 feet, and he beat me by at least 1,450. It was bad. It was real bad. It won't happen like that again. Next time I'll only be behind by 300 feet.
So that's one of those situations when you blew it up and you only went 40 feet. So if you're lucky, you don't have a wife like mine that basically comes down and figures out the math of how many miles per dollar that you have into something. And you don't ever want them to do that to you, because it is not good.
Yeah. I sent pictures to Melissa that was just like a bundle of parts in Steven's hand, like bits and pieces of a piston. And she went, ooh, like, shit. I was like, we're broke. So, but it'll be back. It'll be back. It's going to be a ton of fun when we get back, though. So let's talk about some fun cars as we move into, for the folks that are just coming in now, we're talking about Mega Week, the greatest event that's ever been hosted in Drag and Drive, 530 plus cars. We have Matt Frost, the host, promoter, creator of Rocky Mountain Race Week. And I want to talk about Carlos Astra right here, my man. He probably has the worst finish percentage in Rocky
Hands
Mountain.
down.
Struggles, always has done hard stuff the hard way. Man, he didn't this year. He got it right and got it figured out and finished. It was awesome to see him every day of the week. The first time I talked to him really with the camera in my hand, which is usually the bad juju. I don't want to go up and mess up anything for anybody, but usually when I do, it's the next day when they break. Carlos, we pull up beside him. He's on the side of the road, got a valve cover off. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. I've done it now. I finally interviewed him at Thunder Valley. Now he's broke, but he didn't. It was a simple fix and they were back on the way. So big shout out to Carlos for taking what has been, historically a hard event for him, and going out just kicking ass and having determination to keep doing it.
Well, and he's always come back and he's always tried. And I think the biggest one was when the wagon went over the wall at Great Bend and just freaking tore that car to pieces. And then he had this car, but he's always been there. He's always tried hard, and it's always been disheartening when I see that thing come rolling in on the trailer. I'm like, damn it, not again. So we've had some of those. I mean, Royce Payton was the same for 3 years or 4 years in a row. He never made it out of the track or to the next track, and then he finally got it figured out, and look at what he's done with that Mustang now. But it's the same thing with Carlos. Like, some of the stuff that these guys have done over the years and the learning and you're right, they're not doing it with easy stuff. Royce's deal with the big blower deal, that's hard. With what Carlos is doing with the freaking big valves, big springs, big lift, nitrous, all that crap. It's just crazy.
Yep, that is for sure. Robert Voss here, another big shout out to him. I didn't grab a picture of his car, but says my attitude wasn't great on that last day, but he did give us one of the best quotes ever. This week sure has been a month. Yeah, that was I think that summed it up, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
and then Richard Brewer here talking about one more bolt, which is their YouTube channel. Cole Coleman and Gina or something like that swapped head gaskets at Kansas City, then proceeded to run personal best the rest of the week. So
the Chevelle.
Yeah.
The Chevelle, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you were talking. Yeah, a minute ago.
Yeah.
Johnny Allen here's or John Doherty saying, where does his conceived ride because his cojones ride shotgun? I don't remember who Oh yeah, dang it, Jamie Mackey. Now I know why I always interview with narcs. I always break my car. Oops. Yep, dang it. Hey, and that actually did happen. I forgot about that. Yeah, we talked when they were at Tulsa. Their whole lineup. They brought 5 cars, super cool combos, all the stuff that went along with their whole thing. Talked to her. She gave me the walkthrough of every car that was in their group, and then I think she broke the next day. So sorry about that, Jamie. That was my fault. and Brian. Same way.
One of the things we have to do when we break, 1320 stuck their camera in my face when I lost the wheel bearing when I was set the podium, the only time I ever have been. And I just come over and I was like, guys, do you really have to do this on this? Is this how I make 1320? And they just walked off, and those guys have never talked to me again. I regret the comment now, but it's like first thing they did is
right,
and I'm like,
in your face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's like if you kicked me in the nuts, it wouldn't have hurt any worse.
Sure.
Yeah, it's from the media side, that's a real hard line to figure out. Like usually we kind of let folks cool down a little bit because selfishly, I want to know, I want to learn. Like, so when we broke the old truck, it didn't bother me not one single bit. Steven was a little upset. I was like, dude, as many times as we've beat on this truck, like the boost gauge goes to 20 and it's been buried so many times. Like that motor didn't know us anything. So,
well, the best way to do that is ask a friend. Don't ask the guy that's driving the car. Probably don't ask the guy that's the co-pilot, but the other guy that's already asked the questions and got yelled at, that's the guy you want to talk to.
Yeah, I usually walk up with the camera down like, is it safe?
Yeah.
They're like, no, that's funny. Yeah, Mike Baker saying same thing when Fred interviewed us after we hydroplaned. Worst interview ever. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine.
Robert Voss, breaking has always gotten me more recognition than winning. Hey, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Well, it's all of it. When you do a big old wheelie and you knock the whole bottom of your car out, everybody wants to talk to you. You're a hero because you did a big old wheelie. Didn't do anything for you, but you did a big wheelie.
Yeah, we always love that. Another great story here. Tom Bagley and Danny Gruba. Man, those guys. I know there were 2 nights they were up all night. They were up for a solid like 30 plus hours. When they pulled into Texas, those guys had driven, I think, the last 200 miles or something like that at a max of 20 miles each time because the car was getting hot. They couldn't figure it out. So, like to come all the way from the UK, get the surprise of the car being basically rebuilt, all the new stuff, all the cool stuff, and then to still like have all of that struggle. It was so awesome.
It's not a mega week deal, but that reminds me of Hank in one of the years of race week. 300 pounds of ice they had used piled on top of the freaking over the motor of the car to get it over the mountains and into Bandmere.
Yes.
And it had, if I remember right, it had 0 coolant in it. It wouldn't hold coolant. They just packed it nice.
It's wild.
Yeah, he said they bought every bag of ice for like 150 miles or something crazy. Like that's a great story. Hank Cronk absolutely removed it. Did that? I think they took the cold side piping off for the turbos and all kinds of, and then would just literally throw ice on top of it. Renee Gonzalez here says, "Damn it! So my advice about plastic bags on your cardboard doors is what killed our tranny on the way home."
Possibly.
Yeah, Robert Voss. Oil pressure is temporary, but the internet is forever.
That's for real.
From now on, you're gonna have to chase them. They're gonna be running when you come up with the camera. They're just gonna be run away.
Get away from me! Don't you talk to me. That's what Richard Brewer. YOLO. You're only losing oil. That's awesome. Big shout out to Tom Bagley, who, coincidentally, is still looking for a wife here in the States. If anybody knows anybody wanting to get married, he's a great dude. Highly recommend him as a husband, so he can live here with.
I heard they were trying to get my niece to marry him to make that work. That was
there
the
you go.
rumor anyways. I wasn't sure what they were talking about at first, but I figured it out after a while.
That's awesome. Well, highly recommend that. Another person, Tom Nelson, man, what a cool car.
Oh,
dude.
and a great story there too with those
Yeah.
guys. You know, it wouldn't run, something to do with the ECU wouldn't work with the distributor or whatever. So those guys all pushed that car up there and sprayed a bunch of ether to it and got it fired up to double the bulbs to make sure that he stayed in. That was pretty awesome to watch him do that.
Yeah. Eric has a great shot. I wish I could have found it in time to put the slides in, but it's like Brian Havlick, like you can tell he's like, I don't want to lose my eyebrows as he's spraying that stuff into the blower.
Well, they had the trunk open, and I'm like, hey guys, I said, why don't you just get a water bottle and just put some gas in the water bottle and squirt that? And they're like, oh yeah, let's do that too. So then by that time they'd already sprayed like 2 cans of ether to it. I'm like, this can either really work or this is going to go really bad. That blower is going to say, see you later.
Yeah, right. Ryan Wing says, I got them a distributor in Dallas at 3 a.m.
Nice.
Yeah, he drove it into the hotel. We stayed at the same hotel as him. He drove it in, backed it in the spot. I guess after that it said no, thank you. Tom's a badass dude. That's funny.
Who else? Somebody else had to break the beams too. I can't remember who it was. They brought it up there and they broke the beams with it, and then they backed it back out. Oh, it was Tina. That was when Tina did that. She'd had problems with it prior to the shootout. We were at Ennis and she was having problems and had to go. They had to basically do the same thing. They had it running on ether and got it up in there. I think Blake Hughes helped her figure out how to get it running, and then they had David in the passenger seat filling it or running it with ether to get it to the line so she could stay in competition. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I think at some point, especially when you're that far from home, it becomes the survival.
Absolutely.
Like, I'll go through the stats and see how many people drop day one, and then because after the day one drop, it levels out a lot more. It's not like you're losing 3 or 4% every day.
Well, you're not sitting right there by the trailer, and it's not easy to go back at that point. You're committed at that point.
Yeah, right. Another big car here, Randy Seart. I mean, just an animal.
I got a story for him. That was pretty funny.
Lay it on us.
Oh yeah, he's in the line, and I walk over there, and somebody oiled the track down or something, and he's all buckled in there. So I open the door for him so he could get some air. He didn't know who he was talking to. I don't think. I know he didn't, because he goes, "We're talking," and I said, "Was it going okay?" And this was on test day, and he goes, "I don't know what the hell this guy was thinking. 500 and some cars in one event. He's out of his mind." Like, and I didn't say nothing. Like, I didn't say who I was or nothing. I said, it'll work itself out, and I'm working the door for him or whatever. And then finally they fire him up. So then I go back at the end of the week and I go over there and I said, I know you didn't know it was me you were talking to. I said, but how'd the week go after it all figured? Oh, well, after I figured out that it was A and B group and it went really good. He's like, it was a good time. But I thought I'm like, oh, I loved it because he was honest. He was telling me how it was because he didn't know who I was. But it was
awesome.
That'll always stick with me, I think.
Yeah, he's at Big Sky Race Week right now. I can't believe it. Like he sent me a message the other day. He's having hip surgery at the end of July, and he's like, I don't know if I'll be done by the time Drag Week comes around. I don't know if I'll be fully rehabbed to where I can spend time in the car. He's like, so I wanted to hit big events before then, and to have him at Mega Week was pretty cool. Reset the record that had been standing for a good while. In A group, so just super cool. This car really just works so well. We were talking about the Big Sky numbers. He's in 3rd place overall with this car up against like Royce Payton and Jason Acton in the hearse, and I mean he's like 100th behind Royce Payton right now at Big Sky. Wow. It's crazy. That car just absolutely works.
He's got it figured out. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, Robert Voss says I went through $700 worth of alternators.
Oh my gosh.
Twisted Iron here says surviving the week is not an easy thing to do. That is for sure. And I think that let's talk about that for a minute, because that's kind of the badge of honor. I mean, you give certified streetcar stickers, and I think as we see more of those on cars and years go by, that'll be something that's really important. That'll be something that's really stand out. Like people will be like, look, I mean, I have the sticker. I drove the 1,200 plus miles, depending on the event, in a Rocky Mountain Race Week setting. That's just so cool, man, to really be, I mean, it's got to be one of the hardest events that's out there. And I think that's, again, we go back to saying you got to do hard stuff in your life. Like,
you do. And it's and I know it's a controversial thing for me to talk about with everybody, but 600 miles versus a 12 to 1,300 mile deal, you can't compare that. Like until you've done 1,000-mile drag and drive, or I don't care if it's ours or not. I don't care who you do it. If haven't never done that, the standard has always been 1,000 miles or more. And for everybody that's been before us, the greatest of the great that have done this, the Lutzes and the Larsons and the Joe Barrys and all those great guys that have put in that work. And even myself, like I did the whole entire race week with my car without a trailer, which was a huge accomplishment for me. You know, I mean, me and Brent did it, and we had an awesome time. Luckily, we didn't have no problems with the car other than, some minor normal stuff. But until you've done that, it's hard to watch people be like, we've just set records and we've done this and done that on a 600-mile drive deal. Because if you haven't been out here in the thick of it, and people are like, well, I don't understand why you're so upset about that. I'm upset about it because of how that looks and what we've all gone through. And that's kind of where the world we're at. A 14er, are you going to go, we're going to go climb a 14er mountain or whatever, or run however many miles that these people run and do all that. Well, somebody comes along and wants to shorten it up and make that half of that. We're going to go halfway up the mountain because we want more time to hang out and do all that stuff. Well, those guys didn't do the work that the guys did that went all the way to the top. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not bagging on their event. They have a great event. They're doing great, but the mileage part of it just doesn't seem right to me for what the history of what we do.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the toughest things right now is because we're seeing this insane amount of growth within the community. We talked about a few minutes ago, like what is the right mileage? What is the minimum stuff? And when we went for the world champion point stuff, when we went to 500, it was because of Six Summer. Because in on our opinion, 85 miles a day proves you have a street car, right? Like if you can race at a different track every day for 5 days and drive it, I'm not going to say 85 miles is the right number. It's probably more like 125 if you start doing like a 5-day event,
Right.
So but that proves it. The hard part is an event like yours proves you're a badass because you did it, right? And I think it really takes all of that from our side. I feel like it takes all of that for the sport to grow, because there's some folks that look at 1,000 or more miles and they would stay away forever.
Sure,
they'll look at something maybe like Six Summer with 600 and something miles, and they're like, oh, well, maybe I can do that. And so that helps bring them in. Again, it goes back, I think, to what I love about Rocky Mountain is like it's unapologetically the hardest dragging, especially when you guys were in the mountains, right? Like especially when you were making those drives, and like it was a rule then. Your trailer had to have brakes.
Yep.
Like you couldn't, So I think that's one of the biggest benefits to, one, the growth, but then two, just your not stubbornness, but your want to stay hard. Like you could make your events shorter miles, but why? Like that's not Rocky Mountain.
No,
like,
that goes against the grain of what, to me, that goes against the grain of what this has always been. And that's, to me, that's that challenge. That's that challenge. I mean, I would like to see us get to where we could be at 1,000. I don't necessarily think we need to be that 1,300, but some of the geographic areas of where we go, you don't have that opportunity. If you're going to do 1,000, you're going to have to do 1,300. And it's just like, we wanted to go try that new track of Flying H. Well, when I started looking at, I was sweating it. When I looked at the mileage on that, when we were doing that, I'm like, is there any way we can shorten this? Because I think these guys are going to lose their mind when I tell them that we're almost going to go 500 freaking miles in one day,
In one day, but again,
everybody
drive day.
They did it, and when you can see somebody like Goldstone that's the biggest, the baddest of all, he can do that, and not only do it the way that he did it, but doubled up and everything else. You think that would inspire more of the guys that think they're the baddest of the bad to come try to do that, because then you can beat your chest. I did the baddest, hardest, roughest deal, and I pulled it off, and there ain't nobody badder than me because I did it and I laid that number down. And I don't know. I mean, it's just there. I guess there's a difference in thought process. For me, that's my thought process. If I've got time to do one, I'm doing one that's going to do the mileage that needs to be done, because I don't think that anything else matters at that point.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate that for sure. And that's what I think is so much fun about what you do, because even like race week, which typically kind of follows what we did with Mega Week, like it's still very hard. Like cruising those miles is very hard. Driving those miles is very hard. The people trying to make money or are living off of drag and drive are the ones watering it down. I don't know if I want to get into all that, but I think there's
you better not.
There's definitely some money grab there, but I don't think it's necessarily like, oh man, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to grab this money. I think they want to be involved in the community, but there are several promoters that have never done a drag and drive that are hosting drag and drive events. And I feel like I had this conversation with somebody that was debating on doing it. I'm like, come to the circuit, come do a weekend event, get in your hot rod and just drive along, do the hard thing so you know what to look for.
Yeah.
And so you have to at least do that. So when a lot of folks are looking, but at the same time, if a watered down version, if a 2-day event was 50 miles, does that bring in 10 more people? Does that bring in 20 more people? Like,
well, it does total, but it gives them that false sense that they're doing the big deal. You know, I mean, and not on the weekend stuff. I look at the weekends as the pre-runner to figure out what you need to do to go do the bigger events. But then when the bigger
we're the
events
gateway drug. We're the gateway drug for sure.
But then when the bigger ones start to shorten themselves up, then it kind of gives us false sense of that's the norm. And I mean, I'd like to see people say, okay, I did the 600. Now I need to go try to do the 1,000, or then I need to go try to do the 1,300 and do that. But it doesn't. I don't think it ever correlates that way. And maybe some of that's just because it doesn't get pushed. We want to stay in one spot and we don't want to move our people into other spots. And I get that. I mean, that's just business. Part of this for other people, it's about the business side of it. For me, it's about the people and about the challenge. And there's just always going to be that difference with what we do.
Yep. Jason Schaefer says, how many miles were most of the original drag weeks? I think typically 1,000 was.
Yeah, there was some that were. We've seen some that were 1,400 miles. I remember there was one that at least was a 1,400 mile deal, but generally it's always been somewhere between 1,000 and 1,300 miles, and that's why I based what we were doing off of that as far as mileage goes. Of course, it kind of worked itself out with how we laid out Rocky Mountain Race Week, that it had to be that way. We didn't have no choice.
Yeah, Jason Schaefer, you're saying Lutz's records need to remain unless his mileage was matched. The hard part about like record keeping for us is that yes, he does have the fastest overall what we call national event, right? Week long, all that kind of stuff. But Drag Week moves all the time. Like that is one thing that's been interesting about Sick Week and Sick Summers. They have stayed at the same tracks now for 3 years, 4 years for Sick Week. We've never really seen that. No, it's never been that it's been the same, because I think for a lot of promoters, they wanted to experience different tracks. I know that was kind of the way it was for us with the circuit. We did Ozark and Mocan. We typically had Mocan as a host. Now we're doing Tulsa to Mocan, and we're looking at other stuff for next year.
But the other side of that, the double-edged sword of that, though, is then you try, like if you start if you keep going to the same place over and over, your spectators and stuff get accustomed to you going there and showing up. And then when you move it, trying to get that same amount of people, and that's where it's tough for like us, because at the end of the day, like all of the money that we get from the racers and the sponsors, and like I said, we've got some great sponsors that have, started to come in, Driven and Summit and, Quick Performance. Like some of these bigger guys are starting to come in and help us. And, Motion has always been a great support of us or whatever, but, and done a lot to help us grow. But all that money goes to what we're doing. So what we're looking for is try to get the spectator count in there so that we can be healthy through the year and be able to grow. And when you move tracks like that, but I guess there can be that sort of it too, that you may be missing out if you don't move yourself. Sometimes you might be in a stale area and you might find a spot where you got a lot of people that want to come and see what you're doing. So it's hard though. It's hard to get out of your comfort zone.
I love that it typically we see different tracks, because it gives me an opportunity to add that track to my list, because I would never go to one of the tracks. Like I've been to all the tracks that we raced on Rocky Mountain, but for some of those events, I would have no reason to go there unless it was a drag and drive,
and
which is awesome.
And that's where I'm kind of at now that I can see that we're not, we're trying to get to that point where the spectator count doesn't create the issue for us. I want to start doing the same thing. Like I'm ready to go visit. And that's what I said, when you see what happens if we do another Mega Week, deal, it's going to be in a different area, because I'm ready to go see different stuff. I think everybody else is ready to go see different things. You can't never, you can do the Rocky Mountain stuff all the time, because you're never going to get, it's never going to get old going to the mountains and doing all that stuff. Like that one itself, you can keep doing that all the time. But when you start talking, when we do 2.0 and stuff like that, we need to go different places and see different things, because I'm to that point too where I want to visit these other tracks we've never been to before.
Yep. Real quick, I want to talk about this. Jesse Hazlitt made this comment on the Rocky Mountain Race Weekers post earlier this week too. But he says, is there a thought process to change point system in the DragDriveRepeat or Drag and Drive Championship based on mileage, or change mileage requirements for qualifying events? Minimum mileage, probably not. I think that probably just about proves you have a street car. You can do that. Car count, obviously, we're looking for something in the 120s or above. What I think, and I'll look at it for sure. I said in the post that I don't want to push people towards an event. I also don't want to make it so hard on me finding the points that it becomes a pain in the ass. Because when you start making a whole bunch of rules for something, people hate it, right? So it's been as simple as possible, right? When we basically laid that out, there were 7 or 8 events that qualified. Now there's like 12 or 13. So we can start looking at some of that. An event that would be 1,000 miles or more would benefit to have an extra point. Or, man, I don't know if I could do 2 points, but like maybe that could be an extra point for someone that came and did an event that is longer than your standard. Maybe I find out what the average is. The problem is if I assign that additional point to, we'll use Rocky Mountain Race Week as an example. When I assign that point in December of 2025, and then it comes out in, February or whatever, we don't know the mileage, unless the promoter has the tracks locked in already and kind of has an idea of it would be like, how do I assign that?
Well, can't you just add it after the fact though? Like maybe you don't, maybe it's once you've seen that they've completed it and it's this much mileage, then they get that extra point. So it's not something that's given right off the bat.
I feel like it has to be at least 90 days in advance, so people can
get that
plan around it.
I got you.
Because that's really what stuck us with Six Summer, because beforehand we had a 600-mile minimum, and then again, I don't know the route. I can find out typically, or I can send the promoter a question and say, hey, do you know about how many miles you're going to run? And they'll say, have no idea.
I see what you're saying, because you want to give the guys the opportunity to pick that, to get that extra point if that's what they want to do. But like you said, then that in that sense, then that's you. It can be construed as you being biased towards an event.
And that too. And I definitely don't want to do that, but it is worth more, in my opinion. It is harder to do an event that is 1,000 miles or more.
Sure.
But if there are 2 events that are 1,000 miles or more, and there's 8 events that are not 1,000 miles, like, is it worth the extra points to give those to racers that are competing in Rocky Mountain Race Week at 1,300? Is that fair to everyone else? Because, hey, maybe they couldn't, like, would Six Summer ever be 1,000-mile event? Probably not ever, because they're not going to have any reason to drive 400 miles extra than what they do now. But as we move into, this is all uncharted territory. Like, this is uncharted. People have collected stats forever. Nobody's ever done what we're doing.
No.
So, 2 years we didn't have extra points. I'll talk to the people that are kind of on this committee helping me put this together and discuss that, because maybe that would push more events to be 900 miles or more. Hey, all we got to do is add an extra 1 route stop and we're there, and our racers get extra points. So, I can figure it out from there. So that is something that I'm definitely looking at, Jesse, just so you understand, because this year's going to be tough for everybody to beat Randy Seart if he wins this class at Big Sky Racing. I'm just telling you. So it's going to be tough, because we want people to fight for this and want people to go after it. So,
but what's wild is that we've gotten to a point now where it's not a work together type of thing anymore, and that's the hard part about it. I'm just going to say it straight out there. Like, we're doing this, we're doing that. There's a line drawn in the sand. We're not going to work together to come to a common ground on all this stuff, and that makes it hard. Like, I'd like to see us have some kind of standard, some point that there's got to be some kind of standard for the awards, for the records, for all of that stuff. But I don't know I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, just because of the different thought process of how all this stuff works.
And we've talked about sanctioning bodies. That phrase keeps getting kind of tossed out there. The reality is, promoters don't need a sanctioning body. No. They don't, and there's no reason that you guys would need one. That's why we've never started one, because
we've seen what that does. We've seen what sanctioning bodies does to stuff.
Right. Like, and there's NHRA, IHRA, WDRA, ADRL, Midwest Drag Racing. Like, you can go down a whole range of list of stuff that has their own set of rules, and it just doesn't work, especially for what we're trying to do here within Drag and Drive, which is, at this point, grow the sport. Like, at the end of this year, there's going to be 5,000 people that compete in a Drag and Drive, and if you take out, if it's unique people, there's probably 3,500. We're still so very, very small.
Well, it's still very new. It's very. People act like when they talk about it, like, oh, it's big. It isn't. In the grand scheme of drag racing, this is a very small community of people, because it just isn't to that point yet. You're getting there, because a lot of people are starting to realize, I don't want to just be in a seat and go drag race on the weekend. I want to go spend some time with my car. What's really been cool, I think, where I see with it, is it's not only are they drag and driving now, you have so many more people that are actually, now their car's capable of going to the local cruise night and going to the Sonic and doing those things where they weren't doing a lot of that stuff before. So it's really, you turn the community in a positive way in a lot of different ways than what we just see in our weekly deals that we do.
And one thing, we say race car friends all the time, but like, Uncle Stoney is definitely one of our, you're like the first race car friend I had, really, so it's kind of fun to see how this has grown, and, we can't do this without everybody. So please hit the share button if you're out there, make comments on the side, man. We already got a bunch of folks in here making comments. Appreciate that. It really does. Race car friends really does make the world go round. Like, you got to have them to message at 2:00 in the morning and be like, dude, I don't want to work on this car anymore. And they're like, keep working on it, man.
And, we say race car friends, but we're actually, I would say, more family.
Yeah, you know a lot of stuff that people don't need to know about me.
Same.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right. And then, of course, the sponsors for DragDriveRepeat. We couldn't do, if you guys don't know, I drove up to Iowa or Illinois last week to be at 2 days at Six Summer. Eric is there with his dad all week. We were both just on Mega Week. We're going to be on the circuit here in 10 days, 7 days. Can't do that without our sponsors. So if you're trying to spend a little money, if you're trying to do some shopping for car stuff, hit these guys up. Summit Racing, Deechworks, Molly Motorsports, Driven Racing Oil, Howard's Cams, J-Wire Solutions, who's on Six Summer right now, winning or leading their class, WAF Racing, Performer Built Transmissions, Car Change 3D, Power Tube TV, Sweet Patina, and Racing Junk Classifieds. Man, the list is long. I'm hoping if we can get this one deal worked out, it's going to be even longer here pretty soon. I'm super pumped about that.